Good afternoon. Today is April the 2nd. This is a work session of the Government Operations and Health Facilities Subcommittee. I am the subcommittee chair, Delegate Ken Kerr. Today we have 8 bills to go through. 2 of them seem pretty straightforward, and we'll start with those. Joining us is Committee Counsel Lindsay Rowe, and she will help us to explain the bills and walk us through any amendments that may be present. So Lindsay, if you don't mind, can we please start with SB 309?
This bill was not cross-filed. It expands the Communications Outreach and Advocacy Program in the Department of Veterans and Military Families to include providing services to service members and the families of veterans and service members. The Secretary must include in their annual report a general assessment of communication methods utilized in support of the program, and the bill also alters definitions relating to the military. There are no amendments, and the bill passed the Senate 42-0.
Do I hear a motion on the bill?
Move the bill.
Second.
And a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the bill. Any discussion? All in favor of giving a favorable report to SB 309, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to SB 309? We will move SB 309 onto the full committee with a favorable subcommittee report. Let's move on to SB 829.
This is the bill that extends the termination date for the MBE program by 1 year and also extends the due date for the related disparity study by 1 year. The sponsor mentioned during the bill hearing on this bill that an amendment was needed, which was circulated for this meeting, that alters the termination date for provisions of law applying the MBE requirements to sports wagering licensees. You all will also have a concurrence for the House Bill 991, the cross-file, that the Senate also already adopted this amendment on that bill. So you'll be hearing that concurrence shortly.
Move the amendment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on the amendments. Any discussion on the amendment? All in favor of adopting the amendment, please indicate aye.
Aye.
Your hand. Any opposition to the amendment? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote on the bill. On the bill as amended.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I'll take that, Delegate Chisholm, as a motion, and I'll take that as a second, Delegate Hill. Now I'll call for the vote on the bill as amended.
Aye.
Please say
Aye.
Any opposition to the bill as amended? Seeing none, we will move SB 829 onto the full committee with our recommendation. I see Senator Kagan has joined us, so I know she's got to get to some floor votes. So let's go ahead and take Senator Kagan's bill next. That is which one is that?
365, Senate Bill 365, Mr. Chair.
And the cross-file
I see. I was
House Bill
looking at
541 is also on your
I see.
agenda.
Yes.
Yes, please. Lindsay, go ahead and explain the bill to us.
So I'm going to describe the Senate Bill 365 because that's already passed the Senate with amendments. Just keep in mind, we would amend House Bill 541 to match the outcome today. So this is an emergency bill that establishes a nonprofit organization's navigator within the Department of Commerce. Among other duties, the navigator must represent the interests and concerns of nonprofit organizations as a member of the Maryland Efficient Grant Application Council. The bill specifies the intent of the General Assembly that the navigator position be filled by July 1st, 2025. And the bill also repeals study recommendation and reporting requirements for the Mega Council related to the designation of a state grants ombudsperson and establishes a new one-time reporting requirement for assistance provided by the navigator position in fiscal 2026. The provisions establishing the navigator position terminate June 30th, 2027. I circulated an amendment to the bill that was suggested by Commerce in their testimony that would delete a provision that the navigator cannot provide services.
With her being there, we're not going to bar her from that.
You're not muted. That a navigator cannot provide services to a nonprofit that pays $250,000 to any single salaried employee.
Thank you. Before we go on to move the amendments, is there anything that the bill sponsors would like to say?
Thank you so much, and thank you for switching up the order so I can keep voting. As you may recall, this is adding one human being to support the 41,000 plus nonprofits in our state that really are having challenges, and we need them to get to work right away. Commerce and I, the Department of Commerce and I, and the fiscal note writer all agree that having the Senate amendment, and I think the Senate didn't understand exactly the implications of the amendment of limiting. We do not need our nonprofit navigator to do research on who gets paid what before they decide whether they can be helpful to a worthy nonprofit in Maryland. So Ms. Rose and the committee's amendments sound perfect. I just want to thank Delegate Gazzoni for her partnership in this, and I hope you will move both bills favorably with
Okay, well,
amendments.
Move the
Thank you,
amendment.
Senator Kagan. Delegate Gazzoni.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say that Senator Kagan has worked this bill very hard to get it to where it is now. And I appreciate that. We're just a couple hairs over the fiscal note, so I appreciate everybody being willing to sort of look at this in a favorable light. And again, she has really worked this hard, and I appreciate the effort and have enjoyed working with her on it. So I hope we can get it through. Thank you.
Delegate
Move the
Hill
amendment
moved
on the
the
Senate bill
amendment.
and conforming on the House bill.
Okay,
Second.
and we have a second. All in favor of adopting the amendments on the Senate bill and conforming the House bill, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Seeing no one is opposed, do I have amendment on the
Move the
bill?
bill as
Do I have a
amended.
motion on the
Second.
bill as amended? I do. Any discussion? All in favor of the bill as amended,
bills.
say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to the bill as amended? I see Delegate Chisholm and I see Delegate Kipke. Okay, thank you. And thank you, Senator Kagan.
Thank you so much all. Take care. Bye.
Delegate Kaiser has joined us. So let's do House Bill.
Mr. Chair, I've been here this whole time. And
Oh.
I've been voting.
Oh, good. I'm glad I noticed. Let's go ahead and take your bill next, 738.
Vicky's actually not here yet, I don't believe.
Okay, then
So
we'll wait,
I'm not
we'll wait for
sure.
Vicky. Are
I'm
we
happy
ready
to
to go,
speak to
are we
them.
ready to go ahead with 957?
Yes.
That one might take a little time. So, okay, please explain HB 957 to us.
So this is the bill that, as originally introduced, established state residency requirements for apprentices on and employees on state contracts. The Department of Labor is responsible for enforcing the bill's requirements, and any costs incurred to administer the bill must be paid from the State Apprenticeship and Training Fund. And then contractors found in violation of the bill's requirements are subject to financial penalties and debarment. We discussed amendments last time we met on the bill from the sponsor that limit the application of the bill to covered large projects, meaning public work contracts subject to the prevailing wage law and valued at $5 million or more, located in Anne Arundel, Baltimore, Howard, Montgomery, and Prince George's counties and Baltimore City. That the bill does not apply to state contracts for which the federal government provides money. The amendments alter definitions, make the only residency requirement that a contract for a covered large project must ensure that 35% of the apprenticeship hours are performed by state residents, authorizes contributions in lieu of fulfilling the apprentice and worker requirements to be made to the state apprenticeship training fund or to a registered apprenticeship program. Authorizes a contractor that exceeds the residency hour requirements on a contract to apply those hours to another covered contract within 2 years after completion of the first contract. Decreases the financial penalty for failing to meet the requirements of the bill, and authorizes debarment if a person is found to have violated the requirements 5 times in a 10-year period rather than twice. Since the last meeting, the ABC has suggested amendments, which I circulated actually both those amendments and a reprint that incorporated those amendments and the sponsors' amendments into one bill. So if you're looking at that reprint, which would have the ID 243829/1 and a timestamp of yesterday at 3:54 p.m. at the top. On page 5, they altered the definition of new apprentice to mean an apprentice enrolled in a registered apprenticeship program, since those folks are not, they're enrolled, not employed. And then moving to page 7, the ABC suggested altering the monetary penalty to be twice the number of apprentice hours at the apprentice rate by which the contractor failed to meet the applicable requirement. Previously, this had a percentage monetary penalty. And then for the language regarding payments paid into either the fund or paid to a registered apprentice program. ABC suggested that the registered apprentice program either be operating and training apprentices in the state or be an organization that has a registered apprenticeship program located in the state. So it provides that sort of state nexus for those.
Okay, that's a lot of changes since we last met. So before we move the amendments, let me just check in with the sponsor, the advocates, and the other interested parties. Sharon, can you want to give us an update about what you've been doing since we last met?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman Kerr. I did reach out to Mako and Kevin over there, let us know that they had no objection to any of the bill, as amended from the last revisions from 319, as well as we reached out to ABC and got those amendments over as Lindsay just discussed. And the only other provision that we had concerns about last week was Delegate Hill's concern with the period of like the 10-year period of the 5-time having not making the mark. So that's page 4 regarding for a period not exceeding 5 years if the person is found to have violated the requirement 5 times in a 10-year period. Do you still have any issues with that, Delegate Hill? Because as the bill is written, there is no minimum apprenticeship hours. So I don't know if that should, nullify your concerns or not.
It has to do
I don't
with
have any
the-
updates from that end
It
though.
has to do with the debarment, and it just seemed, but yeah, I mean, if all the parties are, comfortable with it, I just thought that was a lot of look back. Okay.
Understood. And Mako and ABC did not mention any recommendations for that.
Were they asked?
I'm sorry,
Were they asked?
not explicitly.
Well, let's hear from Sean Malone.
No, we had some other issues. We didn't delve into that. I think I appreciate delegates' concern about a 10-year look back. I think it is 5 violations. I tend to think that's a high threshold. Debarment's kind of a tough thing, but we defer to the committee on that. I had other fish to fry, I guess.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like to bring up at this point, Sean?
No, I think that council explained the amendments we had. They were more technical in nature. I think we're good with those 3 amendments.
Okay, so the bill is acceptable to ABC at this point?
Yeah, I think the reprint incorporate those amendments if that's what council said, and we're fine.
Thanks, and thanks for making yourself available to work these
I
things
know,
out.
of course. I appreciate the committee's hard work on the bill.
Is anyone here from Mako? Then let me turn to the committee. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So essentially, this is just an apprenticeship program now that says that at least 35% of the apprenticeship hours are performed by state residents. And if I understand Lindsay correctly, if we have Acme Construction Company that has an apprenticeship program in the state of Maryland, but also has apprenticeship in Northern Virginia, that would qualify if they have people going through the Northern Virginia apprenticeship program. Is that correct, Lindsay? As long as they have one here as well?
So I think what you're referring to is the language that was the ABC amendments regarding payments that are collected for failing to meet the requirements. So the requirement of the bill is to make sure that 35% of the apprentice hours on the covered large project are performed by state residents. Then if you fail to meet that requirement, payments that are collected are paid either to the state apprenticeship training fund or to a registered apprenticeship program that operates and trains apprentices in the state, or an organization that has a registered apprenticeship program located in the state. So that located in the state is with regard to payments that are made for failing to meet the 35% hour requirement.
Okay, thank you for the clarification because I misunderstood, but thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Chisholm. Let's go ahead and move the amendments. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to move the amendments.
Second,
Okay, we have a motion to move the amendments in a second. Is there any further discussion on the amendments? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of adopting the amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to the amendments? Okay, seeing none,
Mr. Chair,
yes.
so those amendments are accepted. Can I just ask, I'll move an amendment that we'll either get a second or it won't, and we'll either vote up or down, that we change the 5-year, if there are 5 the look back would be 5 violations within 5 years, not 5 violations within 10 years. So let me move that.
Anyone want to second Delegate Hill's amendment?
Second,
Okay. Any discussion on Delegate Hill's amendment? Delegate Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to hear from Sean on that. If you wouldn't mind.
We're
Yeah,
fine with the
give it all.
amendment.
Okay.
We're fine with that amendment.
Thank you.
And I appreciate it. Thank you, Delegate.
And Jerron, you're okay with that?
Yes, sir, Chairman.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on Delegate Hill's amendment. Lindsay, do you have the text for that amendment?
Yep, so we're looking at page 4, line 22. We would change 10-year period to 5-year period.
Correct.
Let's see.
Move the amendment?
Yeah, let's move the amendment. We've moved the amendment. We've seconded the amendment. Delegate Chisholm?
Just a
discussion?
technical question. So if a company is found to have violated with more than one individual in this apprenticeship program, let's say they didn't meet the threshold, but that accounts for several different people. That's just one violation, correct? How do they account for a violation?
Anyone have the answer to that?
The requirement is 35% of the apprenticeship hours are performed by state residents. So you could have one, if you only have one apprentice, I don't think that would ever happen. Hypothetically, if you only had one apprentice, they're going to have to be a state resident to get 35% of their hours, to meet that requirement. So you're right. It's going to be a function of how many apprentices you have to get the 35% of the apprentice hours.
That's why I ask, because some of these companies might be right on that threshold, and then one or two people in a 12-month period that they could rack up violations. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but I'm just trying to figure out how they're going to do all this accounting and how it gets implemented and who makes that final determination when there's. I just feel there's going to be a lot of gray line, or there's a lot of gray area in there when you get into 35%, but we're actually talking about numbers of people.
for the last 5 years.
Okay, let's hear from Sean Malone.
I think the way I read the bill, and I defer to counsel on it, but the violation would be not reaching a 35% threshold. So if you had 10 apprentices and only 30% of the hours, that would be a violation. Even if you had more than, it's not the number of employees, it's the number of hours worked. So I think you would have to.
One violation.
It doesn't say a number.
Pardon me?
I think Delegate Tavares, you're not muted.
It appears you'd have to be on 5 jobs and not meet that 30% threshold that you committed to meeting.
Okay.
So I don't think it would be the number of you're right. It could be if you had one apprentice and he was from Pennsylvania and that's who you used on the job and he only worked 25% of the hour, that would be a violation. Just as, if you had 100 and 30 weren't on. So, but it would be per job, and that's my reading. I defer to counsel.
Okay.
She's a better attorney than me.
I just also wanted to interject that the bill also provides that the secretary can adopt regulations authorizing a contractor as an alternative to fulfilling that percentage hour requirement to elect to make a contribution to the state apprenticeship training fund or a registered apprenticeship program. So that would, that would be an alternative if you can't meet the 35% hour requirement.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. I'm good with that, Mr. Chair.
But now that I'm looking at that additional requirement, I noticed that the additional language about that registered apprenticeship program operating and training apprentices in the state might make sense to add to that location as well. I'm looking at page 7, Sean, lines 616.
Okay, what saying? Is that where it says?
Alternative of electing to make a contribution. Right now, it's to the state apprenticeship training fund or a registered apprenticeship program.
Oh, in the state would make sense. Yes, ma'am. That's right.
Delegate Tavares.
Registered apprenticeship program right now is defined in the bill also as an apprenticeship program registered with the Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning in the department.
Okay. I just have just two brief questions. I understand that we're on the floor with an amendment of 5 violations for the last 5 years. That sounds, I don't know, I'm just trying to question, what kind of violation are we talking about? Is it that we're saying that, for example, if somebody's committing wage theft, they gotta do it all 5 years? And what's the penalty on that? Because I just passed a bill last year, HB 211, 2024, that said for one violation where they were convicted of any type of malfeasance, they would be blocked from engaging in business with the state for 5 years. So I'm just trying to see what that seems a little bit inconsistent with what we're trying to propose here. So I'm just trying to see what exactly is it that we're trying to do.
The debarment at issue in this bill would only be for a violation of this apprenticeship hour in-state worker requirement.
Okay, so that's
It's
the
not
violation.
just violation of some other provision of law. It's for a violation of this bill.
Got it. Okay. All
We
right.
have a motion and a second on Delegate Hill's amendments.
To
All in
clarify,
favor?
Delegate Hill's amendment, and then with my addition of the operating and training apprentices in the state with.
I would like to add, amend the amendment friendly with
Okay.
council's suggestion.
Thank you.
And-
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the amended amendment.
Move the previous question.
Okay. All in favor of adopting the amendments, say aye.
Aye.
Opposition to the amendments, Delegate Tavares, your hand is still up. I don't think you want to oppose the amendment. Okay, thank you. Now on the bill as
Move the
amended.
bill as amended.
Second.
Second.
Okay, the bill's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the amended bill? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of the amended bill, say aye.
Aye.
Opposition to the amended bill. Okay, Sharon, Sean, thank you so much for your work on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commanders
I
Committee.
see Delegate Forbes is
Meeting, Mr.
with
Chair.
us.
Y'all
So
again.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
so let's go ahead to 1468.
Would you like me to proceed?
We'll have Lindsay explain. the
Okay.
difference.
Thank you.
So this bill, actually 1468 has gone through the subcommittee already. It was being held up because of the needing appropriations approval for the fact that the transfer of the, which I'll get to, the transfer of the program was going to require $3 million for Department of Labor, which is in the budget, but we needed to make sure it stayed in the budget as it was. So again, this bill transfers the Cyber Maryland program, including the Cyber Maryland Fund and Cyber Maryland Board from the Maryland Technology Development Corporation, TEDCO, to the Maryland Department of Labor. The House Bill 1468 would need amendments to match it to Senate Bill 867, which is also on your agenda for today, altering language for the awarding of competitive grants or contracts under the Cyber Maryland program, authorizing rather than requiring the governor to make certain appropriations, requires the program to seek alternate funding sources from sources other than the state to supplement the fund, repeals the requirement that unspent balances of certain programs and funds be transferred to the Cyber Maryland Fund, requires the board to adopt bylaws on membership rather than specifying this in statute, requires the program in conjunction and collaboration with certain entities to report on cyber workforce program activities, establishes the intent of the General Assembly that amounts awarded in grants and contracts may be allocated for certain cybersecurity clinics and specifies the goals of those clinics, and that the balance of the fund may be used to implement initiatives approved by the Cyber Maryland Board, and alters the effective date of the bill. The other thing that I wanted to raise, though, while I've got you looking at these two bills, is that these bills are quite similar to House Bill 82, which was a Department of Labor departmental bill that you all voted previously. And in that bill, the Maryland Military Coalition came in requesting an amendment to add the Adjutant General to the Cyber Maryland Board. You all adopted that amendment that passed the House, and the Department of Labor supported that. Maryland Military Coalition didn't actually offer testimony on these two bills. So I wanted to put out there that was something that you all had done before, but is not in these bills before you now.
So is it the same board, Lindsay, on all three bills?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer an amendment to the sponsor amendment, since the sponsor's here, to add that additional member that we've already added to the Cyber Maryland Board, so there'd be consistency.
Thank you. Good idea. Sponsor, do you consider this?
That
a-
I'm in agreement with that amendment. Thank you, Delegate Hill.
Someone want to
To the
second
council.
Delegate Hill's amendment?
Second.
Okay. So we adopted the other amendments already. So right now we're just voting on Delegate Hill's amendment.
Yes.
Okay, thank
And
you.
this amendment would go on both this bill and Senate Bill 867.
Okay, thank you. And thanks for that update. I remember the bill now. All in favor of the amendment that's on the table, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposition, don't see any opposition.
Move both bills conforming and then amend it.
Okay.
Second.
Someone-
Tie
Okay,
a ribbon on it all.
all right, and we have
Second.
a second. All in favor of the both amended bills, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition to the amended bills? Okay, thanks very much. And Delegate Forbes, thanks for joining us. Thanks for your patience with this.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Let's see where we are. Let's go to Delegate Kaiser's bill, HB 738. Now that Vicky's joined us.
Is Lindsay gonna start, or can I
Yeah.
start and then pass it on to Ms. Gruber?
How would you prefer to proceed, Delegate Kaiser?
I would like to kick things off if that's all right, and then kick the technical things off. We've brought this bill up previously, and to give people just some context for this IT modernization, the concern is the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that have been lost over the years, very bipartisan losses in the governor's mansion, so not casting any aspersions there, but that there hasn't been a great system in place to ensure that we are good stewards of the taxpayer funds on these things. A lot of work has been done to work with the Department of Information Technology. I see Marcy Jacobs from the Maryland Digital Service as part of Do It. And I see Melissa Ross from the governor's office. A lot of work was done to incorporate a lot of their concerns. I will point out before we move on that there was still a hope from let me stop that part. I do know that the Secretary of Do It has told our chair that they are fine with the bill. I'm glad to hear that. We've started hearing from some agencies, and I do want to address this point for my colleagues. There's a place in the bill on page 3 of the reprint that literally says the words, the secretary shall be, meaning the Secretary of Do It, mind you, the secretary shall be responsible for overseeing the implementation of major information technology development projects regardless of fund source. There's been a lot of debate on that language. There's been a lot of questions from Do It and all the agencies about this. I want to be sure that all of you understand this is current law. And yet the agencies are coming back to us saying, we don't want Do It delegating any authority to us because they've never been the ones in charge. Well, by law, they should have been, but that being said, we are now moving forward and it is prospective. But I will literally tell you that the letters coming in from the agencies say, you can't have this authority because it's never been there before. Well, one, yes, it has. And two, we're the legislature and we can change the authority. So I do want to pass things off to Vicky. I know that she has also looked into some of the concerns that have been expressed by some of those agencies. And I want to ensure our colleagues that when agencies are being asked to be excluded, the question is still not being answered. What's going to prevent that type of loss of money from an IT modernization project if we are not good stewards and we don't ensure that people are in place to watch these projects who actually have technical expertise. So that's what I've got. Delegate Kerr, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. If I could pass it on to Ms. Gruber.
Thanks. Please, go ahead, Vicky.
Yeah, I would actually defer to Lindsay do you want to walk through the bill again or just go over, what has come up since subcommittee or?
All right, let's have
Um,
Lindsay, remind us
So
about the bill.
Vicky, I know you've been working on amendments. Nothing has been circulated to the subcommittee since Friday. So I'm not sure what you would like me to walk through at this point.
Okay, sure. So I'm happy. Not anything material has changed since what the subcommittee walked through on Friday. Essentially, it sets up the same system that allows the secretary to delegate the oversight of implementation. And one thing I would say in the bill that it does, it creates a new definition for oversight of implementation, because I think that has been a sticking point between the agency and the legislature. With the legislature thinking DO-IT is managing all these projects and DO-IT not being in a position or having the capacity to do that. So it says that essentially it means managing the process to implement a new system, and that in doing that, you're providing planning and preparation and ongoing monitoring and support so that the project is successful. So that's what I would say. But that was in the discussion on Friday. Since then, the really only things that have changed, I worked with the Attorney General's office on language that would clarify the fact that monies from the Information Technology Investment Fund, as determined by the governor by budget amendment, as well as the $4.3 million in staff augmentation funds that are already in the FY26 budget, could be transferred to this new office that's created under the bill to provide the assistance, support, and interventions for when projects get started, but then also if something's going wrong. And so we've clarified that language with the Attorney General's office. But other than that, it's substantially similar to everything. I mean, there's no material difference between that and what the committee discussed on Friday.
Vicky, are all these amendments reflected in the reprint?
Yes.
Okay, does somebody want to move the amendments?
Before moving them, Mr. Chair, can I add one more thing?
Yeah, please do.
There's also, I think there was some expressed concern at some point about why I'm not getting the right word, not the legacy systems, but like the, not the office systems. Vicky, what's the right word? The
The office suite?
The
office suites.
office
Thank you,
suites. Yeah.
Mr. Chair got it. The office suites, just want to explain to colleagues as well that there's some concern, why would we require each agency and potentially the entire state to have one thing? To let it be clear that we say, if at all practicable, and we also say exclusions are allowed, if for some reason. So when there's a sense that there's no flexibility here, it's like double flexibility. But in most cases, there's no reason for an agency to have two, and in some cases, there's no reason that agencies couldn't share. So I just want to say that that too, it should not be a concern for anyone. Thank you. Sorry.
Let's go ahead and move the amendments and then we can get back to
Move the
discussion.
amendments.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the amendments. Further discussion, Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to make sure I hear a lot of talking about what's in the bill and the amendments, but I also hear a lot of things that could be interpreted or a little vague. Is there clear language in this bill that someone is responsible for the oversight of these projects and paying attention to the budget and the monies that are spent?
Delegate Kaiser?
The quick answer is yes. We're creating a structure that wasn't there before. We're ensuring that there's staff in each of the agencies that can watch over these projects. And we're ensuring that there's a feedback loop that those people in that position, likely a CIO, will have to report to the DO-IT secretary. So yes, we're creating something that's never been there before to create that structure. Thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Alston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. looking at the letter of concern that came in from the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, and I'm just wondering if the amendments address the CJIS concerns.
Delegate Kaiser, are you familiar with the letter?
I am familiar with the letter, but I actually think Ms. Gruber has a good answer on this one.
Okay, Ms. Gruber.
Yeah. So I actually, it's why I was a few minutes late to the meeting. I was meeting with our attorney generals, and they did not see any issues with the bill as amended by the committee in terms of the issues raised by public safety, similar issues raised by lottery, which is their concern was that you should not delegate to, they were worried that somehow the responsibility to oversee a project would be delegated to an agency other than themselves, and the bill does not do that. To support what the Delegate Kaiser was saying, under current law, oversight and implementation is the statutory requirement that the Department of Information Technology provide that. And so what the bill does is essentially say, look, okay, you don't have the staff or the capacity to do that. We're going to meet you in the middle, and we're going to say you can delegate it, but only under these circumstances where the agency has the internal capacity, the head of the agency accepts accountability for it, and everyone agrees there'll be regular reporting. And so there's nothing in the bill that would allow it to be delegated to another agency where there could be conflicts or other issues. And I was, as I said, I was late to the meeting because I was meeting with our AGs, and they agreed with my interpretation that it doesn't permit the concerns raised by public safety or lottery.
Good. Sounds like it was a good that you took the meeting.
Good
Delegate
10 minutes late.
Delegate Austin, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Delegate Chisholm.
I just want to make sure I understood Delegate Kaiser correctly. When we were talking about office suites, she said that in the bill is the extent practicable. But then I did a search, and I only see it in two places, and it's written as practicable when it's talking about the report. But does practicable actually apply to the office suite somewhere else in the bill?
Delegate Chisholm, I'm looking. Can you give me a minute while other things are happening? And maybe
Vicky may
might
know.
That's fine. You
Yeah,
can just get
sure.
back to me whenever.
So it would be, I'm going to, okay, Section 5 of the bill. It says that DO-IT will work with units of government to find economies of scale through the use of one statewide productivity suite, so that agencies don't independently, separately license Microsoft and Google, essentially. It does say that there will be certain agencies who might need different suites for a specific reason. I mean, you think about maybe Office of Planning and Redistricting, or so it allows for that, but just says that the intention is to do that. And the economies of scale would be, rather than have each agency maybe have a license for Microsoft and also for Google, that the state would have a license for Microsoft or Google. Can't put 100% finger on what the savings would be. Conservatively, maybe 10 million.
Yeah.
And Delegate Chisholm, I'm sorry that I used the wrong language, because I do see it's the may provide for specific exceptions in number 1. And number 2 shall identify other technology or licensing costs that could be reduced with a statewide contract, but not requiring. So I think the extent practicable may have been a prior draft, but I still think this number 1 and number 2 in Section 5 give the outs for the exceptions.
Perfect. I know the goal is efficiency. I just don't want to create, I want to make sure we didn't create a log jam inadvertently by pushing everybody in the same peg. Okay. Thank you.
Delegate Austin, another question, or is that a holdover hand? It's a holdover hand. Okay, the amendments have been seconded, moved and seconded. All in favor of adopting the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, on the bill as amended.
move the bill. I didn't know whether any of the other people who are here.
Yeah, we'll do it once we move the
Okay,
bill.
move the bill.
Second.
Second,
Wait,
Okay,
move the bill as amended, you mean, right?
yes.
Correct.
second,
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the amended bill. Discussion on the amended bill. I know a lot of people have shown up to make themselves available. Do any of you care to weigh in before we vote on the amended bill? Patrick,
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you for allowing us to speak today. Unfortunately, as with some of you, we haven't had a chance to see the amended bill from Friday. The one main concern we continuously have, and I think some of the other agencies are having, is the definition of oversight. We had asked that managing be changed to defining and enforcing, and I'm not sure if that's in this part of the bill, but that does have a direct impact on our fiscal note. And we believe that changing those exact words from managing to defining and enforcing is pivotal for us to be able to support this bill.
Ms. Gruber, do you have a response?
No, all I would say is the definition, which didn't exist before, under the bill, it means management of the process to implement a new technology system into practice and use by a unit. And I think this goes maybe to a fundamental disagreement that I don't have an opinion on between the department and maybe what the General Assembly thought the department's responsibility was. And I understand what Patrick's saying, you can't delegate, and the agencies are saying as well, you can't delegate or you can't say that we should be managing something that we never believe was our responsibility to do. And I understand that's where the agency is coming from, but I also understand that the legislature has a different feeling about that.
Bill sponsor, anything to add?
Outside of knowing that the Secretary of Do-It told the chair yesterday she was fine with the bill, that's my update.
Okay,
I
thank you.
believe, sorry, I believe she meant if the amendments that we had sent over were incorporated, but
Jason Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Jason Davidson, Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. I'm glad to hear that the Attorney Generals agree that nothing in the bill can be delegated to another agency, and that was one of our concerns. I think another concern of ours, because we are such unique, because we are the criminal depository for the criminal justice depository for the state, and we're explicitly linked to federal systems, and we're exclusive to that. I think our concern is that any access to those systems could jeopardize that access to the federal systems, because the feds are they're very stringent on any non-criminal justice agencies having any access. Could anybody speak to that in the bill? And also, I haven't seen any of the amendments since Friday as well.
The bill has barely changed since Friday, but I think to address this, I don't believe that when we talk about oversight or management or any of those related words, that it's ever providing access from one agency's computer systems to do it. If Vicky or Lindsay can confirm that.
I don't think there's nothing in the bill that changes the current law regarding access. And I think lottery had similar concerns, but there's nothing in the bill that changes what an agency needs to keep internal. But it does, as you're implementing a system, it gives what is already current law, do it the ability to say this isn't going right. And it gives them a little more teeth to say this isn't going right, and we're not going to give you more funds when it isn't going right.
Thank you.
Jennifer Beskid.
Thank you, Chair Kerr. And I just want to clarify, when we did view the hearing on Friday, and Delegate Kaiser, you did explain what the intent and the amendments were. Unfortunately, the problem is that we had been provided a copy of the amendments on the cross file, and I believe the language was that the amendments on the House bill were not done yet. So there's language on this, on the amendment that was provided to me, the unofficial amendment that was provided to me on Senate Bill 705 had language about the delegation to the other agencies. And then when I received the reprint and the amendments to the House bill, that's where the clarification had been made, but we had already put in our position at that point. So just wanted to clarify that that's where we were coming from. We are looking at this again, but based on the changes that have been made, there's nothing that's currently jumping out, but again, appreciate the ability to sit in and listen today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Delegate Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to add in support of what the sponsor has been saying, a slightly different perspective, and she will, I'm sure, correct me if I don't have this right, but this is how I understand the bill as a legislator. What we're trying to do with the bill is to make clear that not only does DO-IT continue to have responsibility, but it now has some authority and some leverage so that there is some entity that is responsible when the state appropriates funds for tech projects to making sure that those projects are carried out and we don't have unexplained overruns. To that extent, DO-IT is responsible because they are approving the allotment of the funds, the tranches of funds that come out, for making sure that the unit, the department, the division, whatever, has on its staff the technological expertise to send out the bids, evaluate the bids, make sure that the people who are hired to do the work are doing the work. And if the entity, the unit, does not have that expertise, they now have an incentive to say to do it. We're not sure we have the right people. We're not sure we have someone who is qualified to be, our chief information officer. Can you help us figure out how to get that person on board so that we can do the proper oversight for this project? For DO-IT to do that, and to then, be able to report back to the General Assembly, we're asking them to meet with that chief technology officer so that they know if the projects are running as expected or not. So and if they find that corrections or health or any entity has the manpower with the proper expertise, they are fine saying, we're delegating to you all the internal oversight. We just want to hear at least once a year how things are going. Budget, the Office of Budget and Oversight, they're still responsible for writing those checks and making sure, and they're going to be saying, are we performing as appropriate? And when they hear that things were performing, or that we've got a $500,000 overrun for a important reason, then they'll be able to write that check. But when we find that projects are going off the tracks, the Assembly wants to know sooner rather than later, as does the Board of Public Works, that things are not working out. If that's a contractor problem, if that's an oversight problem. But I think the main thrust of this bill, as I see it, is that we're not finding out in some audit after the fact that we're losing millions of dollars because the contractor's not doing their job, or the contract itself keeps evolving without anybody having any way to rein it in. So that's my understanding of the bill. Delegate Kaiser, thank you. Okay.
From the governor's office, Melissa Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and everybody who's worked so hard on this bill. Vicki Gerber, again, need to give you a shout out. Thanks for your patience in working with us on this. I just, for me, this entire conversation has revolved around what I think is the crux, which is that definition of oversight. And I'm still getting a sense of the two sides are at a disconnect on what that means. And I am no IT expert. I will be totally upfront about that. I am not an IT expert. So I rely on the subject matter experts that do it. And they tell me that if without this little change in the definition, that the fiscal note is still going to be enormous. And that worries me a lot. So I'm not sure. I haven't seen the revised bill. So I'm not sure if that little piece was amended into it. But again, we totally agree that, you know, the oversight of MITDPs, the way these procurements have been happening, you know, late, over budget, not even what you need in the end, because it's been drawn out so long, it's not even a solution anymore. We are in complete agreement with all of that. And we do believe that, you know, legislative oversight is a really important part of checks and balances. But again, for me, I feel like that disconnect in the definition is kind of the crux of the issue. And I worry, you know, if my subject matter experts say it's going to create a big fiscal note, that does give me a little concern. So not to gunk up this process any further, because I know you're anxious probably to move this and get going with only a few days left of session, but I just, for the record, needed to voice that. So thank you.
Thank you. Bill sponsor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In discussion of that language, this definition of oversight, given other parts of the bill that have addressed the fiscal note, there has been no explanation for why the word managing, why the current language creates a $70 million fiscal note, just hey, if you put this word in, there's a $70 million fiscal note. Remembering again that current law already requires a certain amount of oversight, and maybe it wasn't happening before, but that's beside the point. It hasn't been properly explained how it creates that fiscal note outside of the words being said. So.
All right, looks like you have a lot of people who want to answer that question. Let's start with Patrick Mulford.
I will actually defer to the subject matter expert who is leading this team right now, Jenny Smith.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Thanks, Patrick, and thanks, Chairman and members of the subcommittee. That word is particularly key to us because to us, managing means we are in the day-to-day of these projects. We're managing their Scrum meetings, we're managing their backlog, we are talking with all of the staff on the project about what they're working on. It's very intensive. It's project management, it's program management, it's product management, depending on what exactly we're doing. We are advocating for changing managing to defining and enforcing because we believe that that aligns with what Vicky has described and Delegate Kaiser, what you have described, that this language is attempting to say, which is that DO-IT is responsible for defining the process that agencies must follow and enforcing and ensuring they're following the process.
What page are you looking at? I'm sorry.
I am on page 3 of the version of this that we received on Friday. And I'm in section 3.5101M, but I don't know if those are still accurate with the current print of the bill. So it's
I'm sorry, it's the new definition that was discussed on Friday, the definition of oversight of implementation. And instead of, as I understand it, Jenny, instead of saying means management of the process, it means defining and enforcing the process.
Yes, that is the clarification that we are requesting.
Yeah.
That's all you want in 3.5101G.
M or G. I'm not sure what you're
it's
looking at.
It's now G, but it's the same section.
The original.
But how does management of a process, that would be my question. How does management of a process turn into management of a project?
I think that this is the debate perhaps that we've been having between the legislature and the department for the last several years, which I wasn't here for, is that managing to us implies, as I said, we're hands-on. We own that process, and defining and enforcing it means we set the process. The agencies are responsible for following that process. we are responsible for ensuring that they continue to do so.
But the language in the bill, when it describes what oversight of implementation means, it says it means planning and preparation to implement the product or practice and ongoing monitoring and support of the implementation team to ensure successful execution. None of that suggests that Do It is managing those programs.
The word managing suggests that to us, so we just respectfully request that we change it to defining and enforcing.
I would also say that I believe that the planning and, sorry, I'm going back and forth, planning and, I mean, planning in itself, planning and preparation in itself is that day to day.
I mean, I mean, I don't know if the language has to be changed or there needs to be, you know, G2 needs to have a Roman 3 that says nothing in this section suggests day-to-day management by the agency. Would that be another way to solve it?
I think, I was going to say, I believe we would be open to that. It would depend where exactly that is nested.
It would, in my opinion, it would be nested in 3.5101. G, you had it as M, but G right now has a 1 and 2, and 2 has Roman 1 and Roman 2, and potentially it could be Roman 3. That says something that nothing in this section suggests day-to-day management of, or something like that.
Do
Vicky?
you want a minute to think about it? I can move on to Jason.
I don't think, all I would say is when you're managing a process, it's from the beginning to the end, not necessarily about the project. The intent was, you know, Do It's going to set the standards for these projects and what the agencies have to do. And then as the process goes forward, they are going to do, which I think they're already doing to some degree, working with the agency from the, you know, it's not their responsibility because they can give that to the agency, but that they're going to continue to manage the process from, you know, from putting out the RFPs, looking at the vendors and telling the agency, like, you know, you can't, you know, this vendor is not qualified. You can't do that. Or, you know, as you get, you know, towards the end, as they're managing the process, which, yeah, I understand managing sounds what it sounds like, but legislatively, I think it's intended to say, you know, look, Do It, agencies will be, you know, have to take accountability for their projects because it's their projects, but they have to follow the process that we're telling them they have to follow, is the intent.
And that's what I believe we think defining and enforcing is the proper language there, because you would define the process and then Do It would continue to enforce the process throughout.
And be held accountable if we do not do that by the legislature, by OLA. That is the intent behind the language we're recommending.
Let me give everybody a minute to think about it. I'll move on to Jason and come back to you with that question. Jason Davidson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we echo the same concerns as Do It. And I do appreciate the intent and the information shared by Delegate Kaiser and Ms. Gruber. We certainly do believe what the intent is wholeheartedly, but I think the language is concerning to us, especially since there are such stringent guidelines for our systems from the feds as to who can touch them, you know, what kind of personnel can touch them. There are very stringent requirements on the types of personnel that can access these. And I know the intent is not to access the databases, but that definition does open that up. So if we can get that changed and more defined, I think that'd be very good.
But wouldn't defining the process allow them to define the process to allow access to the information you're concerned about?
I'm just saying that as it's currently written, and I would be happy to send you some clarifying amendments for that definition. As it's written, it does cause us concern.
But the current law oversight and implementation of your projects does not?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The current law, which says they have responsibility for oversight and implementation of your projects, is not a concern?
Where is that section in the bill again?
It's current law on page 3.
Page 3.
The secretary shall be responsible for overseeing the implementation of major IT projects regardless of fund source.
Yeah, again, we share the concerns of do it, and we think that definition is a little too broad. We think narrowing it would be helpful to us.
I think she's asking the question, if it's already in state law, why is that a concern? Everyone seems to ignore that it's already state law.
You've been functioning under it.
And I believe overseeing the implementation is different than what Ms. Gruber just said, which is oversight and implementation.
It's the word managing.
How can you oversee implementation though without managing a process?
Through defining the process and enforcing it. That's it's obviously it's for the members of the subcommittee to decide. agreed.
I just think the concern is perhaps loosening the definition will result in the not fixing of the problem, I guess. It would be my thought, but.
Let's hear from the bill sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there's, based on some text traffic and other things, there seems to be some interest in making some modest change to that definition of oversight of implementation, where we are trying to do all the things that we've said, that we're still creating an oversight process. We're still ensuring that someone is holding the bag, someone is looking at the money, and we don't want to keep struggling on these words. I'm not sure if anyone has the right words, if it's something we should move this out of subcommittee. So between now and the full committee voting session, we can finalize some language. And there's always still a chance between now and the floor as well to update what that language could be, because I know that we've run out of time and there's other bills still on the agenda.
Yeah, and the other subcommittees starting. Well, that's a good suggestion that we do go ahead and move this. If we're just struggling over a couple of words here, we can sort that out at the full committee vote, or even on second read on the floor. So quickly, Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, is there any of this language, either or, in any of our other procurement contracts?
Do you know that, Ms. Gruber?
Not as it relates to procurement. No.
Okay.
You don't know that, or you don't know?
No, I don't think in procurement, it's not related to procurement. This is, it's, when it comes to procurement, the contract management generally is done by DGS, and then the agency is responsible for actually, procuring it, issuing the RFP with DGS and involvement. It's very different, like procuring, pencils or papers, and that's part of the problem that the work group is going to study, because IT procurement is so different than traditional procurement that we would think about it. And so oversight of implementation of an actual project moving forward, I suppose maybe the closest thing would be like a capital project construction, that once a contract is issued to an agency, DGS stays involved in terms of project management, but ultimately it's the agency's building. It's hard to compare apples to that to an IT project, and I think DoIT has made that very clear that you can't make us the DGS of IT projects. Like we're the project managers. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm
So
glad we're having this discussion, because
Yeah.
this is what I was hearing when I talked about interpretation and gray areas. So we really need to get this nailed down so we can move the bill forward.
And all I will say is, as this moves forward, I am happy to work with Do It to find the right words that I think we all know what you want. We just have to figure out how to get there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Johnson. Delegate Hill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask Lindsay, and that G1, in your opinion, if it is changed to oversight of implementation means defining and enforcement of the process to implement a new technology, system, or product into practice and use by unit. Oversight of implementation includes planning and preparation to implement the product to practice. Take out the and ongoing monitoring, support of the implementation team to ensure successful execution. And then to Delegate Kaiser's point, and nothing in here is to imply that management means handling the day-to-day operations. I'd like to know what council thinks of that. She's heard the arguments and the fears. If she thinks that that addresses the fears, and then if, depending on what she says, I would ask Jenny Smith about that.
Lindsay?
So I think there's an opportunity to include, like a paragraph 3, G3, that would say oversight of implementation does not include, and then wordsmithing that, handling the day-to-day operation of an information technology project or something like that.
And changing the word management.
So it would keep the word management of the process, but it would clarify that it doesn't include the day-to-day operations, or again, some wordsmithing around how that would be worded.
Because you think that changing the word management to defining and enforcing may introduce other problems. Is that?
Well,
fair?
I think this would hopefully address both concerns, that the word management, because it has been previously used also, doesn't introduce any legislative history that changes any intention that you've had previously in adopting what is already current law.
Very
But
good.
then clarifies that you're not expanding it with this new definition either.
Thank you for that explanation. Mr. Chair, can we find out from Ms. Smith if she understands now why we can't simply change the word management and would be okay with a clarifying paragraph?
Yes, Jenny Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not fully understand, unfortunately, Delegate Hill, although I really appreciate the question. And Lindsay, maybe you could walk through it a second time. We strongly believe that replacing managing with defining and enforcing clarifies the responsibility of Do It here, while leaving that word and adding another sub-bullet to clarify what we mean by that word is a solution that could be acceptable to us. I haven't seen the language you have in front of you, so it would be helpful to see, but seems necessarily more complicated than just clarifying it in the existing language.
Can we save that small definition change, not small definition change for later, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, here's what I'd like to do. We are so close on this, and we have so little time left. And the bill's been amended. The amended bill's been moved and seconded. And I think everybody can be trusted at their word here that we will sort this one area of disagreement out, and we'll go ahead and get it ready for the full committee.
Can I move the whole bill of the amendments then? With
I'd like-
one qualifier?
I'd like to move the amended bill, and then with the understanding that we will amend it again in full committee once we work out this one part of disagreement.
Second. Second.
Okay, all in favor of the bill as amended, say aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And we'll make sure that the doesn't go to full committee until we've worked this out. All right, let's go to Senate Bill 294.
So Senate Bill 294 modifies the membership, organization, and duties of the Maryland Cybersecurity Council. The bill expresses the intent of the General Assembly that the council review and adjust its subcommittee structure if necessary and implement appropriate bylaws of operation consistent with state law by December 1st, 2025. This is a cross-file of HB 376, but was not amended identically by the Senate. The bill, as it originally came in, it was by request of the Attorney General's office, and the bill was really just changing the I would call it like ownership, so to speak, of the council from the Attorney General's office to the governor. And the Senate more heavily amended the bill beyond, again, what the House did. The House added one member to the bill, only changing the membership, and then left the original intent of the bill, changing the selection of the membership and chair of the council. The House bill, as it ended up, had a total of 40 plus members, plus stakeholder involvement for this cybersecurity council. The Senate bill, as it ended up with the changes in their membership, ended up with 38 plus members, plus involvement from 5 federal agencies. So they more heavily amended the bill to expand the council's duties and responsibilities as well. I circulated 2 different proposed amendments for the bill. One from Delegate Hill, adding the University of Maryland Global Campus dean, and a second amendment that was suggested by USM in their testimony that would change the wording of 2 representatives from USM.
Do we know what the Senate did with the House bill?
Actually, I'm not sure. Just a moment.
I guess it's not.
Yeah, they have not done anything that is visible on the website yet.
Okay, Delegate Hill, would you like to move your amendment along with the USM amendment? Can't hear you. Delegate Hill, you're muted to be heard.
I'd like to move my amendment, yes.
Okay, and the USM, do you want to move both of them?
That puts it in alignment, Lindsay, is that what you said? We need both of them?
I don't know. I don't know what the Senate's doing on the House bill on this. That was amendment that came in.
Yeah, let's just move the one and let me just text real quick.
Okay. On the amendment offered by Delegate Hill, 893321/1.
Move the amendment.
Second.
All right, we have movement and a second. All in favor of this amendment, say aye.
Aye.
In opposition to this amendment. Okay. Now, the other amendment, this is the one that came in the University System of Maryland letter, and they are asking for 2 additional representatives.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm texting right now at the senator's office. I don't know if that one's been accepted or not. I know it was under discussion, and I think it's okay, but I don't want us to vote it out and then have to take it back or do something else. So may I suggest we move the bill and
Do the other one in full committee?
Yep.
Can I clarify something real quick? They're not asking for 2 additional members. Those members were added in the Senate. The wording added by the Senate, though, was 2 additional representatives designated by the University System of Maryland with due consideration of geographic diversity. And they wanted to change it to 2 additional representatives designated by the Chancellor of the University System of Maryland and not specify the due consideration of geographic diversity.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. It
Okay, yeah.
doesn't add additional members, it just changes how these members are appointed.
Okay, so I'd like to, I'm texting now, but I know time is short. So unless there's another bill to go
We do
to,
have another one that's going to take some work.
okay.
Does anyone want to move the USM amendment?
I'll move it.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Yes, they're fine with it.
Good.
Okay.
All in favor of adopting the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
No opposition on the bill as amended. Do we have a motion on the bill as amended?
Move as amended.
No, second.
Okay. Any more discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'll call the vote. All in favor of Senate Bill 294 as amended, say aye.
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 Opposition? Okay, thank you. Now, the final bill, see if we can get something moving on. This was Senate Bill 555. This was the one that was given, we discussed earlier. Lindsay.
This bill authorizes but does not require a custodian of a public record under the Public Information Act to deny inspection of a record created for the purposes of pending or reasonably anticipated litigation to which the state, a state agency, or political subdivision of the state is or may be a party, or an officer or an employee of the state or political subdivision of the state because of that person's office or employment is or may be a party. The provisions of the bill must be construed to limit any right or opportunity granted by statute or court rule for a party to litigation to receive discovery. The provisions established under the bill do not apply to a record that is court record or pertains to litigation that has been finally adjudicated or otherwise settled. The bill defines reasonably anticipated litigation as a situation where there's concrete evidence that litigation is expected to occur based on current facts and circumstances. This is a cross-file of HB 821 that this committee has not moved, but the amendments from the Senate were to change rather than records that were pertaining to anticipated litigation. Instead, it reads created for the purposes of litigation, and then they also defined reasonably anticipated litigation.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and move the amendment.
No, sorry, there's no amendments. I was describing the Senate amendments, what they did on the Senate bill since
Okay, good.
not moved to the House bill.
Let's go ahead and discuss this then. Delegate Taveras.
I'm not in favor of this bill. I think that it is troubling. That we are kind of obstructing public information. And so I'm not.
Are you moving unfavorable?
Let's hear from
Yes.
some others before we move.
But I'll just.
Second.
All right. Delegate Chisholm.
Yeah, I'm just going to voice my concern with this bill as well. I think it's an anti-transparency bill. I think that many of the things they want protection from are already covered under federal law when you're talking about litigation. And I think this is just a step too far, and I'm not comfortable with it. So no question, just a statement.
All right. Any further discussion? I think I heard a motion to move unfavorable.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote.
There's no one here from the AG's office or anyone to speak to the bill. Is that right?
No, Tiffany's here.
Can we hear from her, please?
If she cares to weigh in.
Why you need the bill, Tiffany?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me speak. I have our subject matter expert here, Patrick Hughes. You heard from him yesterday. I think he's in a better position to say why we're in need of this bill. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Female.
Patrick, are you still here?
Female.
Hey, Tiffany.
I know it's a
Yeah.
female now, but
It's still weak.
I'm still here. I understand the committee's concerns. I'm mainly here to answer questions. If you all have questions, as I explained during the hearing last week, there have been instances where PI requests have been used to basically disrupt the ability of our office or government law firms and similar.
Can you give us a concrete example, Patrick?
Litigation.
I didn't say the same thing you said last. Can you give us one concrete example so we might understand why this is important to you all?
Sure. So the example I mentioned at the hearing yesterday, excuse me, is a series of requests that during the first Trump administration that we received about the litigation our office was involved in, challenging actions by the federal administration, where we get extremely broad requests seeking records that were created for the purposes of the litigation. And although many of those records are protected, as Delegate Chisholm said, under various protections, it requires such significant work to go through line by line and document by document and parse what is and is not protected, that can disrupt the operations of the government entity that's trying to do the litigation. So that's one example. Another example is, again, I mentioned at the hearing yesterday, is about requests for records created by the tort claims unit of the treasurer's office when considering a potential a potential tort claim, and deciding, whether or not to pay out the tort claim. If they decide not to pay out the tort claim, then there can be requests for, the analyses that the tort claims unit did in trying to figure out whether or not to pay out the tort claim that we don't think is sensitive sort of work product, but it's not done by lawyers. So the attorney work product privilege doesn't technically apply in those circumstances, but the same justifications of why that information should be subject to a discretionary exemption would apply. So those are two examples I can share with you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, Patrick, why should we not be concerned that the average public person, any one of us who puts in a request, or that, some onerous, really vile action by the government is being covered up if we put this in place? How do we know that we're not selling our transparency or other rights of the public in order to do this?
So one thing I would reiterate is the way the bill was amended on the Senate side to make clear that it's just documents created for the purposes of the litigation, would mean that, underlying documents that, existed prior to the fact and that would be evidence in the litigation are not covered by this exemption. So I know that was one concern that had been brought up with the original language, was that it would essentially allow a custodian in their discretion to withhold the underlying evidence of government wrongdoing, for instance, which I don't think this bill as amended would do. It would cover the documents created for purposes of the pending a reasonably anticipated litigation, which is a much narrower category.
Okay, and if I may, Mr. Chair, I would like to hear from Ms. Johnson and why she doesn't feel that the Senate amendments are enough.
Yes, thank you for this opportunity to just weigh in. While we understand the amendments are presumed to narrow this, the application of this bill, it's clear to us that these exceptions already exist. And so where this could be applicable beyond existing exceptions is unclear to us. And so we can only imagine that it would be in areas that it should not currently apply. For instance, during the hearing, Mr. Hughes mentioned that one way what would be seen as reasonably anticipated litigation would be determined would be to look to see whether a tort notice letter has been filed. That is extremely problematic for us in terms of our daily work when folks are asking us for help. One of our very first suggestions is to send in that letter to the government, notifying them of the potential tort claim, because that is required within a year in order to preserve that claim. It is not the filing of the claim. It does not mean that claim is actually viable. It just means that you are getting in your notice so that you can then undertake the process of requesting records and doing the work of determining whether a claim is viable, and then file it potentially within 3 years. So if that is viewed as substantive evidence, concrete evidence of a potential litigation, then everything flowing after that, which is what we often recommend, is that once that tort claim letter is filed, to then go ahead and request records. Some of those records might include, for instance, requests for a summary of certain information that needs to be disaggregated in order to be applicable to what that person is looking for. But if that is created after that tort notice letter is filed, we are concerned that that, along with just a broad array of other circumstances, could be viewed as something that could be denied under this bill. And to avoid that situation, there's already many exceptions available. So if there's any questions, I'm here to answer.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Delegate Hill.
Thank you. So, Dara, I'd like you to tell us what you suggest if we need to do something to address Mr. Hughes' stated concerns and problems that they've had. And then Patrick, what response do you have to assuage Dara's fears, particularly with respect to filing of the the tort thing. So can you have a direct answer to that, Patrick?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, can I jump in 1 second?
Yeah,
Because I
please.
thought the chair told them to talk. Because we got like 30 minutes. I haven't ate. We got
No,
a voting session.
we have,
Oh, okay, I missed that.
okay,
I
we have,
thought you told them that at the meeting yesterday, that they needed to talk and try and work it out. And it sounds like we're about to make them work it out right here.
yeah, we have
A
2
lot of
minutes.
us haven't had lunch, and I'm sorry, I'm a little hangry.
Insurance and pharmaceuticals starts now in 1 minute. So if we're gonna take any action on this bill, it would have to be in the next 60 seconds.
There
believe
is
it
a
was
motion
moved
on the table
unfavorable.
already.
Okay,
Yes.
there's a motion and a second. Let me call for the vote. All in favor of an unfavorable opinion on Senate Bill 829, say aye.
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 Does anyone like to come in favorably?
Not 829, 555.
Oh, let's do it again. All in favor of an unfavorable report on how Senate Bill 555, say aye.
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 All right. Any opposed to that vote?
Me.
Delegate Chisholm,
No, me.
Delegate Chisholm, and Delegate Hill.
Not Delegate
Not
Chisholm.
Chisholm.
Just Hill.
No,
Just-
I was
Okay.
favorable on the unfavorable.
All right, I think I've got it right. Thanks, everybody. Those of you who are insurance pharmaceuticals, you'll have to jump over there right now. And